I am Morgan, 34, and until last year, I was almost trapped into becoming my sister's permanent unpaid nanny. My controlling parents saw an opportunity when Amber got pregnant and abandoned by her boyfriend. They guilted me into coming home temporarily, playing on my desire to help family in crisis. I had no idea they had already converted my bedroom into a nursery and planned my entire future without my consent. I was hopeful I could support my sister while maintaining my independence. But their manipulation tactics nearly cost me everything. If you're watching this from a place where family obligations feel suffocating, hit like and subscribe to hear how I escaped their trap and rebuilt my life on my own terms. Growing up in Meadowbrook, a middle-class suburb outside Detroit, I always felt the weight of being the responsible one in our family of four. My parents, Deborah and Frank Sullivan, established this dynamic early. While my younger sister Amber enjoyed freedom and forgiveness for mistakes, I was held to impossibly high standards. When Amber broke curfew, it was kids being kids. When I came home 5 minutes late, I was setting a bad example. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood and teenage years. Our home looked picture-perfect from the outside, colonial style with a well-maintained lawn and holiday decorations that won neighborhood awards. But inside those walls, expectations fell unevenly on young shoulders. By 13, I was cooking family dinners 3 nights a week, while Amber rarely had chores beyond keeping her room tidy. When I asked why, Mom would say, "You're just better at being responsible, Morgan. It comes naturally to you." Nothing about responsibility came naturally. I learned it because I had to. My high school years revolved around maintaining a 4.0 GPA while working part-time at the local library to save for college. Meanwhile, Amber cycled through friend groups and hobbies, dropping each when they required commitment. Despite her mediocre grades, my parents funded her expensive dance lessons and summer camps, while I received practical gifts like graphing calculators and professional attire for job interviews. "College is your ticket out" became my personal mantra. I applied to schools at least 300 miles away, landing a partial scholarship to Northwestern University in Chicago. Those 4 years gave me my first taste of freedom, making decisions without justifying them, sleeping in on weekends without being called lazy, and building friendships with people who appreciated my reliability rather than exploiting it. After graduation, I built a career as a graphic designer at a respected marketing firm in Chicago. By 34, I had a sleek 1-bedroom apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, a satisfying job that challenged my creativity, and a social circle of genuine friends who respected boundaries. I visited my family for major holidays, but maintained a careful distance that preserved my hard-won independence. Then came the call that would nearly unravel everything. It was a Tuesday evening in April when my phone lit up with my mother's number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Our last conversation had devolved into her criticizing my decision to spend Christmas in Colorado with friends. But something in me still craved parental approval. So I answered. "Morgan, sweetie, we need you to come home this weekend," Mom said, her voice carrying that particular tone that mixed worry with command. "It's important family business." "What kind of family business?" I asked, immediately on guard. "It's about Amber. She's in a situation, and we need to discuss it as a family, face-to-face." After some prodding, Mom revealed that Amber, now 29, was 4 months pregnant. The father, a bartender she'd dated for 6 months, had disappeared upon hearing the news. My parents were helping her through this difficult time, which I knew meant enabling her as they always had. "Just come for the weekend," Mom insisted. "You're still part of this family, Morgan." That subtle guilt trip, implying my independence meant I'd abandon them, was familiar territory. But beneath my wariness, I felt genuine concern for Amber. Despite our complicated relationship, she was still my sister. And unlike our parents, I recognized she was an adult facing adult consequences, not a child needing rescue. I reluctantly agreed to drive down that Friday. Before leaving my apartment, I looked around at the space I'd created for myself, the organized desk where I did freelance projects, the cozy reading nook by the window. The kitchen where I cooked ambitious recipes just because I wanted to. This was home, not the house where I'd grown up feeling like an unpaid domestic helper. The 5-hour drive to Michigan gave me time to establish mental boundaries. I would be supportive but firm. I would listen but not take responsibility. I would offer help within reasonable limits. I rehearsed phrases like, "I can't do that, but here's what I can offer," and "that doesn't work for me, but let's find an alternative." Pulling into the driveway of my childhood home, I noticed fresh paint on the shutters and new landscaping. My parents had clearly been investing in the property. As I cut the engine, Mom burst through the front door, arms wide. "You're here." "Finally," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly before I'd even closed the car door. "We've been waiting all day." Dad appeared behind her, giving me a stiff one-armed hug. "Good to see you, kiddo. Grab your bags. Dinner's almost ready." As I retrieved my weekend duffel from the trunk, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something more orchestrated than a family discussion. My parents seemed tense but oddly pleased with themselves. It wasn't until I stepped into the foyer, with its familiar smell of Mom's cinnamon air fresheners, that I realized how unprepared I was for what awaited me. Amber sat in the living room, her baby bump visible beneath a flowing top. She didn't get up when I entered. Just waved from the couch where she was watching reality TV. "Hey sis," she said, as if I'd been gone for a day rather than months. "Good timing, I'm starving." The casual presumption that I'd arrived to meet her needs sent a warning flare through my mind. But I pushed it aside, reminding myself that I was here to listen and help within boundaries, not to reignite old resentments. Little did I know that in my parents' minds, I had already been cast in the role of family savior, whether I wanted the part or not. Dinner that evening was Mom's standard welcome home spread: pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole. As we settled around the dining table, the conversation initially stayed in safe territory: my job, Chicago weather, Dad's golf league. But as Mom served apple pie for dessert, the atmosphere shifted. "So, Morgan," Dad began, cutting his pie into precise bites. "Your mother and I have been thinking about the family situation." "Amber's pregnancy, you mean?" I clarified, noticing how they avoided direct references to my sister's condition despite her sitting right there. "The whole situation," Mom interjected. "Amber's baby, the house, our future as a family." A knot formed in my stomach. "What about the house?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances before Mom continued with practiced casualness. "Well, we've been thinking it makes sense for you to move back home for a while." "Move back? From Chicago?" "My job is there, my life is there," I responded, feeling ambushed. "Remote work is so common now." Dad waved dismissively. "Your computer job can be done from anywhere." "My computer job is a senior graphic design position that took me years to earn," I corrected, feeling the familiar frustration of having my career minimized. "And while parts of it can be done remotely, I have client meetings, collaborative projects, and office responsibilities." Amber sighed loudly. "It's not like you're saving lives or anything." Before I could respond, Mom jumped in. "We just think family needs to come together during important times. Amber will need help when the baby comes. And I'm happy to visit and help where I can," I said carefully. "But moving back isn't practical or necessary." "We'll see," Dad said with an air of finality that suggested he considered the matter still open for negotiation. "Let's show you the changes we've made upstairs." Those changes became clear when they led me to my old bedroom. The space where I'd spent 18 years had been completely transformed into a yellow and gray nursery. A white crib stood where my bed had been, a changing table replaced my desk, and a rocking chair sat in the corner near new blackout curtains. "Where am I supposed to sleep this weekend?" I asked, stunned by the presumption. "We've set up the pull-out sofa in the den for you," Mom said brightly, as if offering a luxury accommodation. "It's quite comfortable." "You converted my room without asking if I needed it anymore?" The question came out sharper than intended. "You haven't lived here in years, Morgan," Dad said. "The space was just sitting empty except for holidays." "That's not the point," I countered. "It's the assumption that I wouldn't care." Amber, who had been trailing behind us, rolled her eyes. It's not like you were using it. And the baby needs a proper nursery. The nursery's proximity to Amber's room across the hall suddenly clicked into place. So where exactly did you expect me to sleep if I moved back? The uncomfortable silence confirmed my suspicion. The den would be yours, Mom finally said. We could fix it up nicely for you. The den, a cramped space without a proper door, just off the kitchen where early morning noise would be unavoidable. The message was clear. My comfort and privacy weren't priorities because my role wasn't to be a family member with equal standing, but to serve Amber's needs. That night on the lumpy pull-out couch, I tossed and turned as their plan became clearer. The next morning, Mom, accidentally, mentioned the nursery would need painting once you're settled back in, while Dad talked about how they could use another income in the household. When I pushed back, explaining I had a lease and career obligations, they deployed their most effective weapon, guilt. Family sacrifices for family, Mom said sadly. I gave up my teaching career to raise you girls. That was your choice, I reminded her. And things were different then. We just thought you'd want to be there for your sister, Dad added. Especially since you don't have your own family responsibilities. The implication that my life had less value because I wasn't married with children stung deeply. The conversation devolved from there, with Amber eventually storming out claiming I was being selfish for not immediately agreeing to upend my life. Later that afternoon, I discovered more troubling signs. While looking for a charger in Dad's office, I found bills showing my parents were struggling financially more than they'd admitted. A second mortgage, credit card statements with minimum payments, and medical bills suggested they were counting on my income to help stay afloat. Yet they hadn't been honest about this aspect of their family plan. When I tried to discuss finances directly, Dad became defensive. We're fine. This is about helping your sister, not us. But a conversation with their neighbor Sharon revealed another dimension. While helping me carry groceries from my car, she mentioned how excited my parents were that I was moving home permanently to help raise the baby. They've been telling everyone for weeks, she said cheerfully. Your mom's so relieved you'll be taking over the childcare so Amber can eventually go back to work part-time. Weeks. They'd been announcing this plan for weeks before even asking me. I confronted them that evening only to receive confused looks. We just assumed you'd want to help, Mom said. You've always been the responsible one. That's not a compliment when it means you expect me to give up my life to fix Amber's problems, I responded. Amber burst into tears. So now my baby is a problem? Nice, Morgan. The emotional manipulation was familiar but no less effective. I found myself agreeing to stay, just 1 week, to further discuss the situation, a concession I immediately regretted. That week would stretch far longer than I ever anticipated, pulling me deeper into their carefully constructed trap. What began as just 1 week morphed into 2, then a month. Through a series of calculated maneuvers by my parents. Each time I planned to return to Chicago, a new crisis materialized, Amber feeling unwell, Mom needing help with a household project, Dad asking for assistance organizing financial documents. Each request seemed reasonable in isolation, but formed a pattern designed to extend my stay indefinitely. I maintained my job by working remotely, though my performance suffered from constant interruptions. My mornings began with Mom knocking on the den door at 6:30 a.m., often with Amber in tow complaining about pregnancy discomfort and needing company. My workday was punctuated with requests to run errands because you're just sitting at your computer anyway. The first serious red flag appeared when I discovered 3 missed calls from a Chicago real estate agent. When I returned the call, she seemed confused. I'm following up about the canceled apartment viewings, she explained. Your mother said you decided to stay in Michigan permanently, but I wanted to confirm directly. My stomach dropped. I never canceled any viewings, and I certainly haven't decided to stay in Michigan. After scheduling new appointments, I confronted my mother, who feigned ignorance before admitting she'd helped organize my affairs by calling to cancel appointments I'd mentioned during work calls. You were so busy, I thought I'd help, she said innocently. Besides, Looking at apartments seems premature when we haven't settled the family plan. Her use of "we" highlighted the fundamental problem. My parents didn't see my life decisions as mine to make independently. The boundary violations escalated from there. My laptop accidentally got soaked when Mom placed a vase of flowers too close to my workstation. The replacement took a week to arrive, during which I fell behind on projects and had to use the family's ancient desktop computer in the living room, where privacy was impossible. Meanwhile, Amber's expectations grew increasingly unreasonable. She'd text me from her bedroom asking for snacks or help choosing baby clothes online. When I explained I was working, she complained to our parents that I was cold and unsupportive. Dad would then lecture me about family priorities while Mom made passive-aggressive comments about my dedication to strangers at that company instead of your own blood. The isolation tactics began subtly. When my Chicago friend Rachel texted about visiting for the weekend, Mom told her I was too busy helping Amber before I could respond. I only discovered this when Rachel called, concerned about my sudden silence. Similar interferences happened with other friends and colleagues, gradually cutting off my support network. By week 3, my boss Patrick scheduled a video call to discuss my performance. "Morgan, your work has been slipping," he said, concern evident in his expression. "Missed deadlines, communication gaps, lower quality than your usual standard. What's going on?" I explained the family situation while trying to sound professional, but the strain in my voice was obvious. "This sounds less like a visit and more like a hostage situation," Patrick observed. "We value you, but we need our senior designer fully present. I can give you another 2 weeks to sort this out. But then we need the old Morgan back." The warning shot from my career finally broke through the fog of manipulation I'd been living in. That evening, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my worst fears. From the kitchen, I could hear my parents and Amber talking in the living room, unaware of my presence. "The caregiver agreement is nearly ready," Dad was saying. "Once the baby comes, she'll be too involved to leave." "Are you sure this is legal?" Amber asked. "It's a family care contract," Mom replied. "Perfectly legitimate. Once Morgan signs, she'll have formal responsibility for childcare while living here. It protects everyone." "She's still talking about going back to Chicago," Amber said doubtfully. Dad's voice hardened. "That's not happening. We've invested too much in this plan. Besides, she's always done what's expected when pushed hard enough." Their words struck me like physical blows. They weren't just hoping I'd help. They were strategically ensuring I couldn't leave, creating financial and legal obligations without my knowledge or consent. I retreated silently to the den, hands shaking as I processed the betrayal. The people who should have supported my independence were actively undermining it, treating me not as an adult with agency, but as a resource to be deployed for Amber's benefit. The next day brought the incident that would finally push me to my breaking point. While I was showering, someone went through my briefcase. I discovered this when I found my financial statements and passport moved from their usual compartment. When confronted, Mom claimed she was looking for stamps, an obvious lie that confirmed they were monitoring my finances and identity documents. The walls were closing in, and I realized with crystal clarity that if I didn't act decisively, I would lose everything I'd built for myself. The trap was nearly complete, but they had underestimated my determination to escape it. The baby shower was the final straw. Mom had organized it at our house on a Saturday afternoon, inviting extended family and neighborhood friends to celebrate Amber's impending motherhood. I'd helped with preparations despite my growing resentment, still caught in the pattern of fulfilling expectations even as I planned my escape. The living room overflowed with pink decorations, gift bags, and chattering women cooing over ultrasound photos. I plastered on a smile and played my assigned role, serving punch and keeping track of gifts for thank you notes. No one seemed to notice or care that my hands shook slightly or that my laughter never reached my eyes. Midway through the present opening ritual, Aunt Kathy asked Amber about her plans after the baby arrived. "Oh, I'll take a few months to bond with her," Amber replied casually. Then probably look for part-time work once Morgan has the childcare routine established. The room fell silent as dozens of eyes turned to me. I froze, punch ladle suspended over a crystal cup. "You're staying to help raise the baby?" Cousin Beth asked. "What about your job in Chicago?" Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "Morgan's made the selfless decision to move home permanently. She'll be the baby's primary caregiver while Amber transitions to motherhood." "Such a sacrifice," Aunt Kathy murmured approvingly. "Giving up your career for family. That's real love." The room erupted in appreciative murmurs and approving nods. Someone started clapping, and soon the entire room joined in, applauding my supposed sacrifice, one I had never agreed to make. "Speech," called a neighbor. "Tell us what made you decide to come home." Trapped under expectant gazes, I struggled to find words. "I haven't actually decided anything permanently yet. I'm still working through options with my job and apartment in Chicago." Mom laughed too loudly. Always the modest one. "Morgan's already given notice at her apartment and arranged remote work indefinitely. She's just being humble." "I haven't given notice anywhere," I said firmly, feeling something snap inside me. "And my remote work arrangement is temporary." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Amber's eyes welled with tears. Whether genuine or strategic, I couldn't tell anymore. "Let's move on to the next gift," Mom said brightly, steering the conversation away from my rebellion. For the remainder of the shower, I moved through a fog of shock and anger. The public announcement had been calculated, making it socially difficult for me to contradict the narrative without seeming cruel to my pregnant sister. That evening, after the guests departed, the facade of family harmony shattered completely. "How could you embarrass us like that?" Mom demanded as she aggressively loaded the dishwasher, contradicting me in front of everyone. "How could you announce life decisions for me that I never made?" I countered. "You told everyone I'd given notice on my apartment." "That's a lie." "It's what needs to happen," Dad interjected. "We've been patient with your reluctance, but decisions need to be made before the baby arrives." "My decisions about my life are not yours to make," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I have a career, a home, and a life in Chicago that I've worked hard to build." "A job making pictures on a computer," Amber scoffed. "My baby needs you more than some marketing company does." "That job making pictures pays me enough to afford a lakefront apartment and save for retirement," I replied. "And your baby is your responsibility, not mine." Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. "Family takes care of family, Morgan. We raised you with better values than this selfishness." "Is it selfish to expect to live my own life? To make my own choices? When those choices hurt family?" "Yes," Dad said firmly. "We always expected more from you, Morgan. You were supposed to understand family duty." "We've supported you your whole life," Mom added. "Now it's your turn to support us. We're getting older, Amber needs help, and this family needs you here." The truth finally emerged. They had always seen me as an investment that would pay returns in the form of elder care and support for Amber. My independence had never been the goal. It had been a temporary condition they planned to revoke when convenient. "My life is not less important than Amber's," I said quietly. "My dreams and goals matter too." Amber laughed bitterly. "Your career and apartment versus my baby's well-being? There's no comparison." "There shouldn't be a competition at all," I replied. "You're creating a false choice." Dad's expression hardened. "We've made sacrifices for you your entire life. Now we need you, and you're turning your back on family. I never thought you'd be so selfish." The word selfish, their weapon of choice whenever I prioritized my needs, hit differently this time. Instead of triggering guilt, it crystallized everything wrong with our family dynamic. "I'm going to bed," I said, suddenly exhausted. "We can talk tomorrow when everyone's calmer." But as I turned to leave, Mom's next words stopped me cold. "We've already talked to your landlord in Chicago," she admitted. "Your lease won't be renewed next month." We explained the family emergency. The violation was breathtaking. They had actively undermined my housing security without my knowledge. "You had no right," I whispered. "We did what was necessary," Dad replied unapologetically. Sometimes children need guidance to make the right decisions. I was 34 years old, being treated like a rebellious teenager for wanting autonomy over my own life. In that moment, looking at their unrepentant faces, something fundamental shifted inside me. The desperate need for their approval that had shaped so many of my choices simply vanished, replaced by ice-cold clarity. They would never change. This pattern would continue as long as I participated in it. I nodded slowly, giving them what they wanted to see: acquiescence, surrender. I understand now. Relief washed over their faces, misinterpreting my calm for acceptance. You'll see this is best for everyone, Mom said, patting my arm condescendingly. I went to the den and closed the door, sitting in the dark with perfect clarity about what I needed to do. The trap they had set was nearly complete, but they had made one critical mistake. They had pushed me past my breaking point, to a place where escape became more important than approval. By morning, I would be gone. But first, I needed a plan. In the quiet of the den that night, I began methodically planning my exit. The pull-out couch creaked as I opened my laptop, careful to position myself where the screen wouldn't be visible from the door. First, I secured my most critical asset, my job. I emailed Patrick with the subject line, "Urgent personal situation," requesting a confidential video call first thing tomorrow. Then I created a new email account my family wouldn't know about and began transferring important communications there. Next came finances. I checked my bank accounts, confirming my parents hadn't gained access despite their snooping. Sleep was impossible as I cataloged what I needed to take versus what could be replaced. By 5 a.m., I had a clear strategy and timeline. I showered and dressed early, telling my mom I had an important work presentation when she questioned my formal attire. I'll need complete privacy for a few hours, I explained. I might go to the library for better internet. She seemed pleased by my apparent return to cooperation. That's fine, dear. Will you be back for dinner? I'm making your favorite lasagna. Wouldn't miss it, I lied, the words tasting bitter. At the local coffee shop, I connected with Patrick via video. His concerned expression deepened as I explained the situation without emotional embellishment, the manipulation, the lease interference, the caregiver contract, all of it. He struggled for words. Morgan, this is not normal family behavior. This sounds like coercive control. His validation nearly broke my composure. I need to leave immediately. But I can't lose this job. It's my lifeline. Patrick's response surprised me. We've been considering opening a satellite office in Denver. Our client base there is growing. Would relocating there work for you? We could arrange temporary accommodations while you find your footing. The lifeline I desperately needed appeared. Denver would be perfect. They'd never think to look for me there. Consider it done. I'll have HR prepare the paperwork and send it to your new email. Take the week to get settled. And we can discuss logistics once you're safe. With employment secured, I called the one person I trusted completely, Rachel, my college roommate turned best friend. I need a massive favor. I began. And it requires absolute secrecy. Rachel listened without interruption as I outlined what was happening and my escape plan. I need somewhere to go for a few days before Denver. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look. My place in Milwaukee is yours, she said immediately. I've got a spare room, and I'm due for some vacation days. When are you coming? Tomorrow morning. I said. I'm going to tell them I'm running errands, but I won't be coming back. Jesus, Morgan. This is like something from a psychological thriller. Do you need me to drive down and get you? No, I need to do this myself. But having a destination means everything. With Rachel's support confirmed, I tackled practical matters. I located a storage facility near her apartment and reserved a small unit. I contacted my Chicago landlord directly, discovering my parents had indeed called but had no authority to end my lease. I arranged for a moving company to pack and store my Chicago belongings until I relocated to Denver. The most difficult task was deciding what to take from my parents' house. I couldn't empty the den without raising suspicion, but certain items were irreplaceable: my professional portfolio, important documents, sentimental items from my grandmother. I needed a distraction. The opportunity came when Mom mentioned needing groceries for dinner. I volunteered enthusiastically, then remembered some work supplies I needed from the office supply store. I might be a while, I warned. I have several stops to make. Take your time, Mom said, handing me a lengthy grocery list. Your father won't be home until 6 anyway. Once out of sight of the house, I drove to the nearest bank and opened a new account at a chain with no branches in my hometown. I transferred most of my funds, leaving just enough in my original account to avoid immediate suspicion. I purchased a prepaid phone as a backup, then made strategic stops to collect essential items, toiletries, basic clothing. A sturdy suitcase that wouldn't be missed from home. At the storage facility, I prepaid for 3 months and stashed these purchases along with items I'd gradually removed from the house over the past few days. The groceries were my last stop, carefully selected to maintain the illusion of normal family dinner plans. That evening, I played my role perfectly, helping prepare dinner, discussing baby names with Amber, even looking at paint samples for the nursery with apparent interest. I suggested a family movie night, an unusual request that pleased my mother immensely. As we watched an innocuous comedy, I memorized their faces, knowing it might be the last time I saw them for a very long time. Later, as the house quieted, I wrote a letter to Amber. Despite everything, she deserved some explanation, even if she wouldn't understand it. I explained that I loved her but couldn't sacrifice my entire life for her choices. I wished her well with the baby and expressed hope that someday she might see things from my perspective. I sealed it and hid it in her jewelry box where she'd find it after I was gone. Morning arrived with a knot in my stomach. I dressed casually, grabbed my purse containing my most important documents, and announced I was running to the bakery for fresh breakfast pastries. Mom, still in her robe, waved me off with a smile. Can you get those cinnamon rolls your father likes? And maybe some decaf coffee for Amber? Sure thing, I said, pausing at the door to take one last look at the home that had become a prison. See you soon. The click of the door closing behind me felt momentous. In my car, I placed my house key on the passenger seat. I wouldn't be needing it anymore. Instead of turning toward the bakery, I headed for the interstate, accelerating toward Milwaukee and freedom. As the town limits sign disappeared in my rearview mirror, conflicting emotions crashed through me, crushing guilt, soaring relief, lingering fear, and underneath it all, a growing certainty that I was finally doing what I should have done weeks ago, choosing myself. My phone began ringing 2 hours later, first Mom, then Dad, then Amber in succession. I let each call go to voicemail. After the 4th call from Mom, I pulled over at a rest stop, removed the SIM card from my phone, and inserted the prepaid one. That part of my life was now officially on pause. By early afternoon, I reached Rachel's apartment building. She was waiting outside, her expression a mixture of concern and relief. When she hugged me, I finally allowed myself to cry. Great, heaving sobs that released weeks of tension and years of accumulated pain. You're safe now, she whispered. And you're not alone. For the first time in longer than I could remember, both statements felt true. Denver welcomed me with spectacular mountain views and crisp, clean air that somehow made breathing easier in every sense. 2 weeks after my escape, I stood in my temporary corporate apartment, unpacking the essentials Rachel had helped me ship from Milwaukee. The company had been surprisingly accommodating, treating my situation with discretion and support that made the transition smoother than I'd dared hope. My new phone contained only a handful of contacts: Rachel, Patrick, HR, and a therapist recommended by the company's employee assistance program. My old number remained active but untouched, collecting voicemails and texts that I wasn't ready to hear. Rachel monitored it occasionally, reporting the general tone without specific details that might pull me back into the emotional vortex. They've escalated to threats, she told me during our nightly check-in call. Your dad's talking about filing a missing person report. I'm a 34-year-old woman who left voluntarily. I pointed out, that's not going to get much police attention. They're telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown. Your mom's Facebook is all pray for our troubled daughter posts. I laughed humorlessly. Classic. When control fails, discredit the escapee. The predictability of their response somehow made it easier to bear. They were following a manipulation playbook I'd seen my entire life, but for the first time, I was outside its reach. My colleagues at the Denver office welcomed me warmly, unaware of the full story behind my transfer. I threw myself into work with renewed energy, finding that freedom from family drama left mental space for creativity I hadn't accessed in years. Projects that would have overwhelmed me in Michigan now felt manageable, even invigorating. Apartment hunting became my weekend project. I found a sunny one-bedroom in a modern building with security features that gave me peace of mind. Key fob entry, a doorman. And no connection to my name in public records since I leased through a corporate housing service. My parents had my social security number and birth date, so I placed a fraud alert on my credit and monitored my accounts religiously. 3 weeks after arriving in Denver, I received my first direct contact from them, a certified letter from my father filled with emotional manipulation masked as concern. "We're worried sick about your mental health," he wrote. "Abandoning your family when we need you most shows a serious break from reality. Come home and we'll help you get the treatment you need." The letter continued with thinly veiled threats about family reputation, financial repercussions, and the unforgivable pain I was causing my pregnant sister. Every sentence was calculated to trigger guilt, shame, and fear, emotions that had controlled me for decades. I shared the letter with my therapist, Dr. Winters, at our next session. "What do you notice about this communication?" she asked after reading it. "It's all about them, their pain, their needs, their disappointment. There's not a single question about whether I'm safe or happy." She nodded. "And what does that tell you?" "That I made the right decision to leave," I said, the certainty in my voice surprising even me. The next phase of their campaign came through social media. My mother posted vague but alarming updates suggesting I was mentally unstable and potentially in danger. Old classmates and distant relatives began messaging mutual connections, trying to locate me. I deactivated my accounts temporarily, creating another barrier between my new life and my past. 6 weeks after my departure, Amber delivered a healthy baby girl. I learned this not from family but from Rachel, who still lived close enough to hear local news. The birth announcement in the local paper listed the baby's name as Morgan Elise Sullivan. "They named her after you," Rachel said gently. "I thought you should know." The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Naming the baby after me was their ultimate guilt weapon. How could I abandon my own namesake? But the tactic revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of why I'd left. This wasn't a negotiation strategy to get better terms or more appreciation. This was a necessary separation from people who viewed me as an extension of themselves rather than an individual with my own valid needs and desires. 2 months into my Denver life, I was building routines that nurtured rather than depleted me. Morning hikes in nearby parks. Evening cooking classes where I made friends who knew nothing of my past. Weekend exploration of local museums and galleries. Small pleasures that accumulated into a life that felt authentically mine. Then came the escalation I'd been bracing for. A police wellness check at my apartment. Somehow they had tracked me to Denver, likely through employment records or credit card trails. The officers were professional and quickly satisfied that I was neither missing nor in distress. "Your parents seem very concerned," one officer mentioned. "I left voluntarily and am perfectly fine," I explained. "I'm an adult who chose to relocate for work and personal reasons. Technically, we can't tell them we found you without your permission," the officer explained. "But we need to report back that you're safe. Please tell them I'm safe, but do not disclose my location or any other details," I requested. "And please note in your report that I do not want contact." After they left, I called the attorney I'd hired specifically for family matters. The constant pursuit had become harassment, and stronger measures were needed. She drafted a cease and desist letter outlining exactly what would happen if they continued their current behavior, potential harassment charges, restraining orders, and legal action for defamation regarding the mental health claims. The letter was delivered with documentation of their actions to date, screenshots of social media posts, copies of messages sent to friends, and records of their calls to my employer and landlord. Their response came through my attorney, shock and outrage that I would attack them legally when they were just worried about their daughter. But beneath the indignation was something new. The first tremor of recognition that their control was truly gone. My mother's social media campaign suddenly stopped. The calls to my old number became less frequent. Extended family members who had been enlisted in the search backed off. The formal boundaries I'd established through legal channels had accomplished what years of conversations could not. They were finally forced to acknowledge my autonomy. 3 months after leaving Michigan, I received an unexpected email from my cousin Beth, who had been at the baby shower. "I don't know what happened exactly," she wrote, "but I recognize the patterns from my own mother. If you need family who understands boundaries, I'm here." Her message cracked open a door I'd thought permanently closed, the possibility of family connections that respected rather than trampled my independence. We began a careful correspondence that became a bridge to the parts of my family history worth preserving. As summer turned to fall in Denver, I felt myself unfurling like a plant finally receiving proper light. Colleagues commented on my increased confidence in meetings. My work portfolio expanded with innovative projects that showcased abilities I hadn't fully expressed before. I dated casually, establishing healthy boundaries from the start. The most surprising development came from Amber. 6 months after the birth, she sent a brief email to my work address. "Parenting is harder than I expected. I think I understand a little better now." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, the first crack in the family narrative that I had abandoned them rather than escaped manipulation. I didn't respond immediately, taking time to process with Dr. Winter's weather and how to reestablish limited contact. When I finally replied, my message was simple: "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you and the baby are well. I'd like to hear more about how you're doing." The door to reconciliation wasn't fully open, but neither was it permanently locked. On my terms, at my pace. I could choose what relationship, if any, I wanted with my family going forward. The power dynamic had fundamentally shifted, and we all knew it. 1 year after my escape, I stood on the balcony of my new permanent apartment, a place I had chosen, furnished, and paid for myself. Below, Denver bustled with evening activity. Behind me, a home that reflected my tastes and priorities awaited. My phone contained messages from friends who valued my boundaries and supported my growth. The journey from trapped family caregiver to independent woman had been painful and complex. But standing there, watching the sun set behind the mountains, I knew with absolute certainty that I would never again surrender my hard-won freedom to anyone's expectations but my own. 1 year turned into 2. And Denver transformed from a hasty escape destination into genuine home. My apartment walls, once bare and temporary feeling, now displayed framed photographs of new memories, hiking in the Rockies with friends from my ceramics class, celebrating my promotion to creative director. Weekend trips to small mountain towns where no one knew my history. The marketing agency had thrived with our Denver expansion, and I'd thrived with it. My portfolio had grown to include award-winning campaigns that bore my distinctive style, clean, impactful designs that communicated complex emotions with elegant simplicity. The irony wasn't lost on me that my ability to distill complicated feelings into visual clarity had been honed through years of navigating family dynamics. News from Michigan came primarily through cousin Beth, who had become an unexpected ally. She reported with careful neutrality that Amber had finally taken responsibility for her daughter, little Morgan, after my parents had shouldered most childcare during the first year. She got a receptionist job at the dental office, Beth told me during our monthly video chat. "Your parents watch the baby during her shifts, but she's handling evenings and weekends herself now." I felt a complex mixture of emotions at this news: pride in my sister's steps toward independence, sadness at the lost relationship. and lingering wariness about the family narrative surrounding my departure. How do they talk about me? I asked, a question I'd carefully avoided until now. Beth hesitated. It's evolved. At first, it was all about your abandonment and mental breakdown. But your legal response shook them. Recently, there's been less talk about you coming back and more acknowledgement that you've built something for yourself in Colorado. This subtle shift represented a seismic change in my family's dynamics. For the first time, they were adapting to my choices rather than expecting me to conform to their demands. My therapist, Dr. Winters, had helped me understand that I couldn't control their interpretation of events, only my response to it. Your freedom doesn't require their understanding, she reminded me often. Though it's human to want it. The turning point in our estrangement came unexpectedly through tragedy. My father suffered a minor heart attack, and Mom called my work number in panic. Though we hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, I answered. Morgan, she breathed, her voice smaller than I remembered. Your father's in the hospital. It's not. They don't think it's life-threatening, but I thought you should know. Thank you for telling me, I said, my professional voice slipping automatically into place. Please keep me updated on his condition. Will you come home? The question contained none of the demand I would have expected previously. I can't right now, I replied honestly. But I'd like to send flowers and call him when he's able to talk. The silence that followed wasn't angry but thoughtful. He'd like that, she finally said. That brief conversation opened a narrow channel of communication, short, informative emails about Dad's recovery, occasionally including updates about Amber and the baby. I responded with equal brevity, sharing only selected details about my work and Denver life. The emotional manipulation that had characterized our relationship was notably absent, replaced by cautious neutrality. 3 months after Dad's heart attack, I received a letter that changed everything. Unlike the previous communications designed to guilt or control me, this one began with words I'd never expected to read. I may have been wrong about some things. Mom's handwriting continued across 3 pages of careful reflection. She didn't explicitly apologize for the attempted trap 2 years earlier, but she acknowledged expectations that weren't fair and pressures you had every right to reject. She described how my departure had eventually forced Amber to develop independence she might never have found otherwise. Your sister is a different person now, more responsible, more aware of consequences. The struggle has been good for her, though none of us would have chosen it. The letter concluded not with demands for reconciliation, but with an open door. If you ever want to visit on your terms, we would welcome seeing the woman you've become. I read the letter multiple times, searching for the hidden manipulation, the subtle guilt trip. Finding none, I shared it with Dr. Winters. What do you think? I asked. Is this genuine? The question isn't whether it's perfect, she replied. The question is whether it's enough for you to consider redefining the relationship on new terms. After careful consideration, I decided it was. I responded with equal measure, acknowledging the pain on both sides, affirming my decision to leave while expressing appreciation for the reflection that had clearly occurred in my absence. I suggested a video call as a first step, with clear time boundaries established in advance. That initial 40-minute conversation was awkward but civil. Mom seemed older, more subdued. She asked questions about my work and listened to the answers without commentary. I inquired about Dad's health and Amber's daughter without offering to help or visit. The call ended with tentative plans to speak again the following month. Slow, careful steps led to a new kind of family relationship, one with firm boundaries, limited sharing, and the clear understanding that I would never again live in Michigan or assume responsibility for others' life choices. Our communication remained primarily digital, with rare, highly structured in-person visits where I stayed in hotels rather than the family home. The most profound change came during my 3rd visit back, when I finally met my niece, now a precocious 3-year-old with Amber's eyes and none of the knowledge of our complicated history. After an afternoon at the park, Amber walked me to my rental car. I get it now, she said suddenly. Why you left? I waited, giving her space to continue. Being responsible for another person 24/7 is exhausting. I can't imagine being expected to raise someone else's child on top of giving up my own dreams. She looked toward the playground where our mother was pushing little Morgan on the swings. They would have consumed your whole life if you'd stayed. Her understanding, however belated, was a validation I hadn't realized I still needed. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. I was so angry at you, she admitted. But now I'm almost proud. You showed me it was possible to say no to them. I never thought that was an option before. The irony was perfect. My selfish act of self-preservation had ultimately benefited everyone, forcing growth and readjustment that might never have happened otherwise. Amber had developed resilience and independence. My parents had confronted the consequences of their controlling behavior. And I had built a life that honored my needs and values. Back in Denver, I shared this revelation with my close friends during our monthly dinner gathering. These relationships, chosen family built on mutual respect rather than obligation, had become the foundation of my support system. To boundaries, Rachel toasted, visiting from Milwaukee for the weekend, and the courage to enforce them. And to chosen family, added Miguel, my colleague turned friend. The people who love us because they want to, not because they have to. The healing journey continues daily. There are still moments when the old guilt resurfaces, when I question whether I could have found a less dramatic solution. But these thoughts no longer control me. I recognize them as echoes of conditioning rather than truth. The greatest lesson from my escape wasn't about family dynamics or manipulation tactics. It was about the profound difference between being needed and being valued. My family had needed me as a resource, convenient childcare, financial support, emotional management. But they hadn't valued me as an individual with legitimate desires and dreams of my own. My life now is filled with people who value rather than merely need me. The distinction creates relationships built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns from your own life, please know that establishing boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. Your dreams matter. Your time matters. Your independence matters. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for others, is to step away from relationships that treat you as a means rather than an end in yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts on setting boundaries with family. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to help others find this message. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to create a life that honors your authentic self. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on yours.